Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Chad Calek, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast for episode number 57, which I'm back, everybody. I am back. Thank you all for your patience. I was hard at work editing the subject matter that we're going to talk about today, which is Phantom Rider, the Prelude to Paleface. My latest documentary that was spawned from just a ton of things happening at once since the release of Two-Face the Gray, which was my last documentary. For those of you that have not seen Sir No Face and Two-Face the Gray, I'm going to try in a nutshell to sum these two films up quickly to bring you up to speed. In the shortest version possible that I can tell this story, Sir No Face was a documentary about myself meeting Mr. Craig Powell, Nicky Myers, and the WSPR investigative team in West Sydney, Australia, and seeing this footage they had of a full-body apparition, what appeared to be the most compelling footage I've ever seen of a full-body apparition, on Cockatoo Island. And as it turns out, the investigation was sanctioned by the Australian government. They actually found Craig, selected him and his team, made them an incredible offer in which they spent 2 years with full access on Cockatoo Island, which was a former naval base and a former convict prison. So the entire film of Sir No Face is essentially me trying to catch Craig and his team in a lie and debunk his footage, only to come to the conclusion that he filmed something for sure that is not human. And since the government told Craig and his team that they were being invited to Cockatoo Island because the public and staff that worked for the government had had countless paranormal experiences, we believed we were looking at footage of a ghost. Now, I went on tour with that film. And while I was on tour, and this is one of the craziest things, I thought for sure that the audience, there would be members of the audience that would want to argue the validity of the footage, as that's just commonplace, right? There are just skeptics that are skeptical no matter what. But what I found on the Sir No Face tour was that I would say roughly half the audience basically said, we believe you caught something, but you got it wrong. What you filmed was an alien gray. And initially, I had a lot of pushback on this. And I had a lot of pushback basically because I'm not a ufologist. I'm definitely somebody who has a great interest, and I'm an enthusiast, but I'm not somebody who's spent their whole life in the field of ufology. But I did know that there were some very weird things about the case that absolutely screamed of the potential for an extraterrestrial presence, including the fact that Craig and his entire team had all experienced a time loss, which happens constantly in extraterrestrial contact cases. At least it's reported. That was a major thing that they filmed. Another thing that I found to be really bizarre was we had figured out the actual height of Sir No Face, in which the top of its head, barely came to Craig's waist, which would, make the thing, under, 4 feet tall, something like that. But yet it looked like an adult in its features. It did not look like a child per se. And you just have to see the image to know what I'm talking about. The image does have a resemblance to an alien gray. Absolutely. And more than anything, there was just some really weird behavior by the government. The government offered to pay Craig and his team a ridiculously high salary as far as ghost hunters go, in which they told them they could turn in their own time cards, they could pay as many members of their team as they wanted. They offered to buy them equipment, and they told them that when they were done capturing all this footage, they wanted them to be ambassadors for the island and start a paranormal ghost hunting tour that they would lead. I mean, it was like really over the top for something that they would have done for free. Tell any ghost hunting group you want to come out and investigate this ex-naval defense site, and you can have full reign. Of course, they're in for free. In which Craig and his team spent over 2 years investigating this place, in which in the process they documented the most compelling evidence ever captured on film. In addition to the Sir No Face footage, there was also what we called Sir's Lights, which is just stunning to watch. Basically, in Sir No Face's house, the officers' quarters, on request, he could make a light go off that, depending upon where you were in the building, that would determine, where you thought it was coming from. Because people could see like a nucleus. I guess that's the term I'm using because that's kind of how it's been described. But basically the light was so bright that it didn't even cast shadows because it apparently came from everywhere. It's hard to describe until you see the footage, but essentially, yes, this happened over and over again, and they filmed it. And not only did they film it, Craig and his team brought members of the Australian government back to the officers' quarters, in which they experienced this phenomena for themselves. They experienced it for themselves. Now, Craig had also showed them the footage of Sir No Face. So they hired them to determine if the place was haunted. And they showed up and showed them, the most intense paranormal evidence that had pretty much ever been captured on film. So why did the government allow them to just keep investigating? This actually went on until after my A Blood Red Sky tour. I called Craig and said, I need a venue. I want to come back and do a ghost hunting event for fans. In which Craig said, I have a great place, Cockatoo Island. He booked us in there. He saw it as a way to run a one-off event, since the government had stated that they would be leading tours and events. He thought, well, this would be a good way to kind of show them the process and how we would do it. So we did it. It was sold out. It was an awesome event. And there was crazy activity there that night. I was floored. I was blown away. That was the first time I had saw the footage that they had captured of Sir No Face. And I left there knowing that I wanted to do a documentary about this experience. The day after that, the government bounced them off the island, said no more investigating, get your stuff, get out, and it was over. Which was extremely bizarre that they shut this down the day after the American documentarian shows up that can get this story out to the world. So, there were a couple other things that happened that were incredibly bizarre. Right when we had decided to move forward with, shooting Sir No Face and doing the whole documentary, I was doing a tour promoting not only A Blood Red Sky, but a couple of my shorter films. and we had a date in Townsville. At the beginning of the show, there's this man who walks in that we refer to as the tattooed face man. He had a tattoo of Amun Ra on his face. And the short of it is, this gentleman showed up and gave me this package that had these amazing photos, all kinds of like emails or letters to presidents, and hacked emails, and medical records, police reports. And he said that the information in the box contained the details to what he believed was the biggest story in the world. They kept saying that. It's the biggest story in the world. This man did not know me. There was nothing out there that would make anyone believe that I'm a ufologist. I made that clear to him that I was not a ufologist. He bought a VIP ticket with no interest in my paranormal work. He simply bought it for the FaceTime that he gets. And he just told me, I'm not looking for a TV show to get famous. I'm not going to do interviews. The information in this package, I was knifed and shot in Mexico getting this information out of there. And I'm pretty much his insurance policy. If he disappears, then he knows that somebody that can share it has it. And last but not least, he tells me that if I think he's crazy and if I think it's all BS after researching it, then don't worry about him contacting me ever again. He will never see me again unless I reach out to him. It was one of the most bizarre encounters I've ever had, and what shocked me the most was that I believed him. There's just a way a man speaks when he has a mission, when he has purpose, and when he's being honest. And he just spoke honestly to me, which blew my mind. Now, the other bizarre thing as far as contact goes happened after the release of Sir No Face. I went home and I began researching all the contents of the Tattooed Face Man's ufology box. And I'm not going to get too much into what I've discovered since really digging into it, but what I can tell you is that it tells one hell of a story. And if it's real, I'm floored. And in the future, in the Paleface documentary, we're going to get into that heavy. But the other thing that happened when I started researching those materials is that a gentleman emailed me stating that his name was Daniel David Skyfall, in which he sent me next to a damn near book. And he said, here's your answers. This is what's going on with you, with Craig. You guys, or Craig did in fact film a gray. And he goes on to give me this incredible history and all these links to footage that he says is real, in which he claims that he worked for a dark, unacknowledged intelligence agency associated with the U.S. government, in which his job was to basically drive the UFO narrative in whichever direction he was told, through the use of lies, misinformation, whatever he had to do to basically make the public believe what they wanted and disbelieve what they wanted them to disbelieve. And he said once he figured out why this was happening, he decided he could not let what the powers that be, let's call them the globalists, let's call them the elitists, the heads of oil, the heads of electricity, the energy barons, essentially. Once he figured out what their plan was and saw what he claimed to be the world being destroyed at an incredible pace, he decided that he wanted to get the truth out, in which he now claims he has to be excessively careful so that nobody knows where he's at and what he's using to contact me. Now, what's really weird is he'll send me an email, and the second I click it to open and read it, I'll get done reading it, close it, and like it's on a timer or something, it will just disappear only after I read it. And if I write him back and send it, it'll say, you get that outgoing message, cannot send, like that comes up. But then he'll respond back to that email like it did go through. So it's the weirdest thing ever. I mean, I think clearly he's a hacker. And the story he told was absolutely incredible. And he basically laid down that there were 3 major mistakes that mankind had made. And I'll let you watch Two-Face the Gray to see what those are. But essentially, he said, there is a fake alien invasion coming, but it is to gain public support and hatred for the alien presence, so that when the real alien invasion that is coming actually happens, the world will come together and will want to fight this presence in the hopes that the energy barons and the globalists can maintain their power and control over planet Earth. Now listen, I am the first person that will tell you I thought this was crazy as shit when I read all of it initially. But the more and more I researched what he was saying and the events that were outlined, it just started making all kinds of sense. And suddenly it seemed like Craig was not recruited to document whatever was out there, whatever he filmed. Suddenly what made sense is that Craig was recruited so that the government could document him and his people and their interactions with this creature. Now, was this a real alien or something different? According to Daniel David Skyfall, the government has been engaged in making bio-nano droids that are basically robots with tissue skin that look like Greys, and that's what Greys are. They are droids, which is why they are emotionless, supposedly. Again, thought it was crazy. And then months later, I find an interview in Australia with Dr. Stephen Greer, a very, very profound ufologist, very famous. And when she goes on to say that in Pine Gap, in Alice Springs, that they are making these bio-nano droids. And in fact, he knows a physicist and a scientist involved with the program that says they're coming off the conveyor like sausages. That they're making a ton of them so that when they stage the fake UFO invasion with the use of such technology as Project Bluebeam, which can shoot holograms off the clouds that appear to be authentic. Again, all of this stuff at first seemed crazy to me. But the more and more you watch and learn of all these top-ranking military men, the astronauts, police officers, everyday people, that have had these sightings and these experiences, you start thinking, well, how crazy is this stuff? The first time that I had heard of MK Ultra, I was like, this is crazy. Like, come on. The government's snatching up people and forcing them to do, acid so they can mind control them through radio waves. You're like, this is bullshit. And then you find out 100% absolutely what happened. 100%. And like, that's crazy. 100% absolutely happened. You just start realizing there's just so much more to this world than we know. And the big indicator was when Tom DeLonge, out of the blue, Tom DeLonge, Blink-182's dick and fart joke guitar player, out of the blue, is suddenly surrounded by the U.S. government's top military brass, from the Department of Defense to the CIA to the FBI. I mean, like, all of these top-ranking career, men of the Air Force and the Armed Forces and defense for the U.S. are suddenly fully invested into working with Tom DeLonge, in which magically, after the government saying for years that UFOs are not real, the Department of Defense decides that Tom DeLonge is going to release 3 videos with certified provenance from the DoD that shows what they claim to be 3 UFO encounters with military aircraft. And I remember looking at that going, oh, well, this makes total sense. To me, like, as far as what they're doing, this is soft disclosure. This is a way to break a scary story, but do it in a way that's not scary. And how you do that is you have the dick and fart joke guitar player tell the world about this, with nothing but excitement, instead of having General Mad Dog Mattis tell the world about this. I mean, think of the difference that would have been if General Mad Dog Mattis walked out and said, ladies and gentlemen, I have 3 videos I'm going to show you of 3 aircraft in which we cannot even understand the technological advancements of these crafts. We are so far behind it is crazy. We're going to watch this footage and we're going to, tell you when it's over that we still to this day have no idea what this is. Or do you have Tom DeLonge tell the public and then tell him how excited he is because he and his new team are going to build a new spaceship even better than those? And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And he admitted, on the government's behalf, that the government had this agency that had been tracking and reporting UFOs for years. In fact, he had the head of that program. Realizing that the only way this would occur would be if the government set this all up, I knew something was up right away. I was just like, this doesn't make any sense, man. Something is up. Something is up. So once I got Two-Face the Great done and presented Skyfall's timeline, and all this information, weird things started happening around me. Weird things. My phones started making sounds that make no sense, that I've never heard before in my life, which we were able to document this between Craig and I. For about 2 weeks, I was certain that I was being followed by this black Mercedes that would always have its lights on with tinted windows. And it only stopped once I had told on the phone my partners Justin and Thomas about this, in which we talked through a plan basically to, drive these people to the police station, slam it in park, and get out and try to film them, whoever was following me. And then that day it stopped. But then even weirder things started happening. I was watching television here with Laura, and all of a sudden, on my television, it says a guest is trying to basically cast video to your television. Do you agree, yes or no? And I was thinking, well, if someone's trying to stream a video to me, it's probably one of my friends in the building. They're probably playing with me. How they got my password to log into my network, I have no idea, because we have a private network that we pay for to be private. And it has its own security on it, too. So I hit yes, honestly thinking this is going to be a friend. And it ends up being footage from outside the front gate of my place. Just somebody streaming footage, which was terrifying. Unfortunately, I was not able to document that because they only streamed it for about a good 20, seconds total. And it took about, 3 or 4 seconds to realize what the hell I was even looking at. But I ran out there as fast as I could. Couldn't find anybody. But in order to stream like that, you would have to be pretty dang close in the vicinity of my television to do that. So whoever it was, they were extremely close, which obviously scared me. And then I start hearing really crazy stuff from Craig. During the filming of Sir No Face, Craig got a visitation from 2 guys that fit the detail of the Men in Black, in almost every way, except for the fact that they weren't wearing black. They were just wearing normal slacks and shirt, in which they came and visited him and essentially told him to back off Sir No Face, and it's not happening, to get out of the project, or else type of thing. In which this had a profound effect on Craig. Obviously, someone comes to your front door and starts, essentially threatening you, because they said to him in that first meeting, we don't want to have to come back here. So we talked, and he made the decision that we would keep moving forward, and that he would just do everything he could to document his entire property. Well, after the release of Two-Face the Gray, while I'm starting to deal with all of these issues where it feels like someone, is surveilling me, unbeknownst to me, the same exact thing is going on with Craig. As without speaking for several weeks, out of the blue, I get a phone call from Nikki saying that she believes somebody's following her in a black car, and she's certain of it, and that she's, went through different crazy routes to see if he was following and drove circles and roundabouts, and that she was just certain that that was the case. And then Craig tells me that these 2 gentlemen return. And I'm going to have Craig on next week. And I'm going to have him tell the story, because the details are horrifying. But the short version is Craig was attacked. And he was hurt. And he was told it ends now. And in the coming weeks, a number of things happened that they were able to document. And on my end, there were a couple more things that were truly bizarre that I was able to document. And the stuff just kept compounding and compounding. Or it was very obvious now that somebody did not like the fact that we were telling the world that Sir No Face could potentially be a fake alien gray, that a fake alien invasion was coming. And then I get a call from Craig saying, well, I don't have to worry about them coming back anymore because they're surveilling my house 24/7. And if I look, I could find them. In which he said, I'm going to send you a picture. And he said he looked across the street, and in the shadows of this tree, he could make out the outline of this large man. So he maneuvered his way around, and he got a photo. And what's so bizarre is this man had a mask that Craig said the second he took the photo, without a flash, the mask started glowing. And at first I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then he sent me the photo. And it is chilling. It is disturbing. And everybody will see the photo in Phantom Rider, the prelude to Paleface. Now, shortly after, right when we think nothing could get crazier, it happens. As the Australian government got a hold of Craig, and I'm not going to say on here what they serviced him with, but it was shocking because they essentially told him, there's something you have to do. There's something you have to do for a third party. And we don't want to look stupid. But that ultimately, I don't think the Australian government even really knows who this third party is. Because they told Craig that they're not telling him. But that regardless, he has a set of directives that he has to follow for the government. But what this proved to us is that there is, in fact, an unacknowledged third party, which I felt like since the beginning, that there was somebody else that's not the Australian government. Now, it could be an unacknowledged group. It could be maybe somebody from the US. I don't know. But I've always felt like there is a third party that has an interest in what we're doing because they're paying such close attention to us. And shortly after I presented this idea to Craig, and he totally agreed, just last week, on his way home from work, on his phone, he gets sent a video that someone shot while they were following him. Now, the video had no name on it, which that's all I'm going to say about this until Craig could talk about it, because it just gets so crazy. Now, I just released the trailer to Phantom Rider, the prelude to Paleface, which includes everything that has occurred since the release of Two-Face the Grey. And everything that I've told you in the last 15, 20 minutes, it's just scratching the surface. The high strangeness that has become our lives, it just keeps increasing and increasing. And the harder and harder I push, and the more I talk about it, and the more I make videos about it, and the more people get involved in it, it just seems like the more pissed off they are, whoever they is, and they want us to take the film off the market and shut up. That's what it feels like. And initially I thought, well, a couple things had happened, like the first couple weeks after we released, Two-Face the Gray. And I was like, well, a couple weird things happened. Could or couldn't be. Maybe I'll just put these videos out there and let people decide. But the steady amount of high strangeness and bizarre events, and now it's gotten to the point where I definitely feel like I'm being surveilled. Craig's been straight up attacked. And he has a photo of a man with a glowing head that's running surveillance on his home. If this sounds crazy to you, it should sound crazy because it is fucking crazy. But you know what it also is? True. It's happening. And I know Craig. I know his wife. I know his kids. Craig is an honest man. And if I wasn't having my own, things that I'm experiencing, then, maybe I would wonder, is he being honest? Because any investigator is going to wonder that stuff. But I know Craig, man, there's no chance. He doesn't want this in his life. This isn't cool stuff to say. He doesn't want anything to do with this. I know Nikki wants nothing to do with this either. The kids definitely don't. This is not comfortable. But there's a truth that we have to find out here. What did Craig film? What did he film? Because it wasn't a human being. That much I know. So what did he film? And did the government recruit him and his team as unknowing assets to basically be guinea pigs to see how they respond and how they interact with one of these droid grays? I don't know. But I know Skyfall keeps dropping breadcrumbs that lead all the way back to Pine Gap. And I left there with a box full of breadcrumbs from the tattooed face man. The answers are in Australia. And that's why I decided to release Phantom Rider, the Prelude to Paleface, as the initial third documentary before we go to Australia, because everybody has to see what is going on and so much has happened. So if you haven't seen the trailer to Phantom Rider, the link is below. We're doing everything we can to first inform the public of what's going on. And then we're going to dump every dollar we have into getting back out to Australia to shoot Paleface, which will be the final search for answers to figure out what is going on. We're doing everything in our power to raise the money to film 30 days in Australia starting in September, because we're going to have to fly all over that country. We're going to have security. There's just so much stuff we're going to have, and Australia is just an incredibly expensive place. So we're putting every dollar that we have into it. Phantom Rider, there are pre-sales available right now. There's only 100 DVDs available. So if you want that, get your copy ASAP. And if you get the online version now, you'll actually save $7 off doing it now. But what I can tell you is that Phantom Rider is going to blow your mind when you see the full scope of everything that I've told you, plus the things that I haven't, plus the connections from the first two films. It's going to blow your mind. It is going to blow your mind. Someone asked me, how do you keep making this film if you're this scared? And my response was, I don't know how not to make it. There's only so many times I can say to myself, this can't be real. And then it's proven real. And then I say, well, why was I put here? Why am I here? I didn't film No Face, Craig did. But I have to ask myself, am I here by chance? By chance, all of this just happened? It's one of those things where I don't think it is. If there is, in fact, a fake alien invasion coming, and the world is to be tricked to become one nation, finally, the New World Order, and we're sitting at the front end of this being possible. As crazy as that sounds, I don't know how to just walk away from that without seeing it through to get the answers. I don't know how. But I know it affects all of us. And I know that if we are to find the answers, it will only be through your support. So please watch the trailer. It's a Phantom Rider, the prelude to Paleface. Because I know it keeps me up at night. It keeps me up at night, and I do everything I can to distract myself and just have fun and just live life. But man, this makes it hard. So thank you guys for your patience in editing the trailer and working on the film. And I'm also working on 74 minutes at the same time. I just needed a break because I have to hit certain dates to stay on track. And I was starting to get behind. But I will continue, with In a Crowded Room podcast episodes. There's going to be 6 or 7 in a row coming up here. So thank you guys for sticking with me. And I will be back tomorrow for sure with another podcast. Much love, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to episode number 57 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.